We begin today the beginning of Daf Chav Zayin Amud Aleph. Upiv mitzupe zahav. It said in the Mishnah that the shofar that they were using in the Beis HaMikdash had its opening covered in gold. Zok the Gemara Vatanye, but we learned in the Braisa. Tzipos of if you covered it with gold, b'mokim anochas piv, in the place where you put your mouth, puzzle. So then it's puzzle. It's separating. You're blowing with gold. You're not blowing a shofar. You got to blow a shofar, not blow gold. If the gold is not in the place where you put your mouth, then kosher. Then it's going to be kosher. So Amar Abaye says, yeah, that's the pshat in the Mishnah as well. Kitna nami masnisin, when it says in the Mishnah that they plated the shofar with gold, petnan. This refers not to the place where they put the mouth, but further down. So there's actually two opinions about this, that Ramban here speaks about it. What does it mean exactly when it says in the Gemara, Mokim Hanochas Piv, the place where you put your mouth? One opinion is when you have the tip of the shofar there where you put your mouth, so the thickness of the shofar, not the sides of the shofar, not the walls on the sides of the shofar, outside, but the thickness of the actual shofar on the top where you put your mouth, that's what Hanochas Piv means. As long as you're putting it on the walls of the shofar on the side, even if you're putting it right at the end, near where you put your mouth, it doesn't matter. As long as it's not on the thickness on the top. But another opinion says, no, if you put it right on the walls, on the side, right near where you put your mouth, so your mouth is going to be touching there as well. So you have to put it a little bit further down. So the Gemara, it said in the Mishnah that on Rosh Hashanah you had the shofar that was in the center, that was the mitzvah.
The Gemara doesn't ask afterwards, but it says piv.
Right. In the Mishnah. What is the lashon of the Mishnah? Upiv mitzupe zahav. Okay, the opening. It was towards the opening of the shofar. That's where it was. It wasn't at the other end of the shofar, but the Gemara doesn't ask it.
It says, but we had it before, the lashon doesn't say that.
Okay, yeah, I hear what you're saying.
It says by Karen. It says
right. Okay, the Gemara doesn't ask, I hear. So it said in the Mishnah, you have the two chatzaitzris that are on the side of the shofars. So you're going to blow shofar, and there's also going to be the sounds of the trumpet together with the shofar. Frag the Gemara, could you hear the sound of the shofar and the chatzaitzris together? You can't hear two sounds at the same time. When the Eibusha says by the Aseres HaDibris, Zocher and Shomer, it was said together, the human mouth cannot speak two words at the same time, and a person with his ears cannot hear two things at the same time. So you see that you can't hear two things at the same time, so how do you have the chatzaitzres being blown together with the shofar, two sounds, and you can't hear them? And for the Gemara, lakach ma'irich b'shofar. This is the reason why it says that you do shofar. The sound of the shofar goes past the sound of the chatzaitzres in order that you can hear the sound of the tkiyah of the shofar separately. Frag the Gemara, how does that help? Lememre, shall we say, the chisha masayif tkiyah beloit chilas tkiyah yotza, that if you only heard the end of the tkiyah without the beginning of the tkiyah, so you only heard a part of the tkiyah, you're going to be yotza. And then we would say also umimela. And automatically we understand that if it would be the opposite, the same thing. Tchilas tkiyah, if you only heard the beginning of the tkiyah, beloy saif tkiyah, without hearing the end of the tkiyah, also yotza. Should also be yotza. That's what it seems from here. You don't need a full tkiyah to be yotza the mitzvah. But the Gemara here is going to bring rayas that it's not so. Tashema. So the first raya is, it says as follows, Toka barishayna. So you come to blow the tkiyahs. Now, how does it? It begins with a tkiyah in the beginning. So you blew the first tkiyah. And then you blow the trua, and then a mashach b'shniya. When it comes to the second tkiyah, so there he blew a long second tkiyah, kishtayim, long enough that it could be like the length of two tkiyahs. And he wants to use this one long tkiyah as two tkiyahs, one for the tkiyah that he needs for the end of the tkiyah, trua tkiyah, and one for the next tkiyah. So ein biyadei ela achas. Even though he blew a one long tkiyah, and he wants to use it for two, but it's not. It's only one tkiyah. So if the Gemara asks, but amai, tesalek lebetarti, why can't you have this one tkiyah be two tkiyahs? The first half use for the first tkiyah, and the second half use for the second tkiyah. Just like we're saying here, that you hear only half of the tkiyah in your yaitze, so you can divide one tkiyah into two halves, and then you have a half for one and half for another. And for the Gemara, no, from here it's not a raya. Psuki tkiyas ma'adodi loy paskina. When you have one long tkiyah, to divide it into two, that we don't do. We don't cut one tkiyah into two. Before we were talking about one tkiyah. Elamai, you didn't hear the full Tkiyah. You only heard the end of the Tkiyah. Or maybe you only heard the beginning of the Tkiyah. So that we could say that you could be Yaitze with a chelik of the Tkiyah. But to take one Tkiyah and to divide it into two, that we don't say. Tashema, but now the Gemara brings a raya. Here we have another, this is the next Mishnah here. A person blows a shofar into a pit or into a dus, which is like a pit, but it's just above ground. So you blow into a barrel, a big barrel. So if you heard the sound of the shofar, yotza. So then you're yotza. But but as the nature is in these places, there's an echo, and you heard only the sound of the echo, then lo yotza. You're not yotza. That's the Mishnah. Frak the Gemara. But amai, even when you're hearing the echo, why does it say you're not yotza? Leipik with chilas tkiyah, you should be yotza with the beginning of the tkiyah, mekame de la arvev kala, before it gets mixed in with the echo. The echo always follows the sound. It doesn't come right in the beginning. First you're hearing the sound of the shofar, and then towards the end, it gets mixed in with an echo. So why can't you be yotza just with hearing the first part of the tkiyah, even if you don't hear the completion? We just said that you could hear the ending without the beginning, like in the Beis HaMikdash, and you're yotza. So over here you should be yotza with hearing the beginning without the ending. So therefore the Gemara says you're right. The Gemara gives now a different answer. This is not the reason why they were mayrich with the shofar, in order to be able to hear the ending. That wouldn't be good enough. Ella, the answer to our question, how could you hear two sounds at the same time? Tarti koli mechad gavre, if there are two sounds that are coming from one person, loy mishnami. That's something that you can't hear. Like over here with this echo and the sound of the shofar that's coming from one shofar that a person is blowing, so that's something you can't hear. Metrei gavri mishtami. However, if there's two sounds that are coming from two different people, like it was in the Beis HaMikdash, there was someone blowing the chatzaitzeris and then there's someone blowing the shofar. If it comes from two different people, so that's something that a person could hear. But the Gemara now asks on this as well. Fragt the Gemara, umetrei gavri mi mishtami. Can you hear the sound that comes from two different people? Tanya, we learned in the Braise, when they read from the Torah. So the way it was in the times of the Gemara, they would read the Chumash and they would also read the translation. There was a metargim that would translate everything. So echad kaire ve'echad metargim. There's someone that reads from the Torah, and then there's someone that is metargim. He translates the Torah. But al bulvat shelo yiyu shnayim kairim, or the other gears on the side of the Gemara is shelo yehi echad kaire. You can't have one person reading from the Torah or shnayim metargim, and then you have those people that were translating that they should translate in the same time when they're reading from the Torah, because you can't hear both of them at the same time. No, so what do you see over here? That it's two different people. You have one person that's reading from the Torah, another person that's translating, even though it's two different people, but you can't hear both of them at the same time. So the same thing.
You can't hear or you can't comprehend both?
I don't know if you have to comprehend. By the mitzvah of Kriyas HaTorah, to hear the Kriyas HaTorah, you don't have to comprehend necessarily.
You can hear two people talking.
Okay, now let's see what the Gemara is going to say here. The Gemara is saying when you're hearing Kriyas HaTorah, the person will not. He won't hear Kriyas HaTorah and the Targum if you're going to have both of them at the same time. So the question is, let's see what the Gemara is going to say. We're not finished yet. When it comes to the shofar and the chatzaitzis, we should say the same thing, that you can't hear them at the same time. So the Gemara says, no, sometimes you could hear two things at the same time. When is that? The case of the shofar and the chatzaitzis is similar to what it says in the sefer of that brayse there. What does it say? B'halal u'b Megillah. If you're saying halal, if you're hearing the Megillah being read, even if you're going to have 10 people reading at the same time, you'll be able to hear all 10 people. Why is this? What's the pshat in this? Yeah. Alma, so you see from this, kivin the chaviv, if it's something that's cherished by the person. Rashi teaches that the meaning of chaviv means, because this is something that is new. It's not every day, it's not every Shabbos, it's not all the time. This is something that's special. It comes once a year that you hear the Megillah, or Halal, which is once in a while, yoev daite. So that's something that a person wants to hear, so he can pay attention and hear what he wants to hear. That's Rashi's pshat. Other Mefarshim said that the chavivus is because you're reading the Megillah and there's the story, there's the nest. So that's something that a person wants to hear. So hachanami. So now the answer over here, the final answer of the Gemara is when you get to the shofar and the chatzaitzis, here it's the same thing as well. Kivin the chaviv yav daite v'shama. Because a person wants, it's chaviv for him. That comes once a year. He wants to do the mitzvah of shofar. He wants to hear the shofar. So even if the chatzaitzis is blowing, he's going to hear the sound of the shofar. He pays attention and he hears. So sometimes a person could hear two things at the same time if he really wants to.
He's not really hearing two things at the same time.
He's paying attention to the shofar.
Yeah.
He's paying attention to the shofar, correct? So sagt the Gemara, Ela lama meirich b'shayfer. If so then why do you need a shayfer to go past the sound of the chatzaitzris? If you can hear the shayfer together with the chatzaitzris. And for the Gemara, Leida shemitzvah hayayim b'shayfer. That's only to know, to let people know what the main mitzvah is, that they should see that the main mitzvah is the shayfer. That's why the shayfer goes weiter. Not in order to hear it, you can hear it anyways, but just to make it known that the mitzvah is shayfer. Yes, this is in the Beis. The Gemara is going to talk about it. This is in the Beis Hamikdash. Yes. No. They were talking about only in the Beis Hamikdash. We're going to see. The Gemara is going to speak about it now. And the time of a tainis, they would use the shayfer of rams, which is curved, like what we use today, and it was covered with silver. So the Gemara, why, when it comes to the shayfer, so it was plated with gold? And why over here, when it comes to the tiniest, the shayfer was plated with silver? So the Gemara, if you want, I can answer kol knufye the kesef. We find the whole concept of blowing with the shayfer on a fast is for one reason. It's a sign to come and gather people. So when you come and gather people, it's done with silver. The chsiv is kesef. Now you should make trumpets that are made from silver. So therefore, even if we're using shayfris, but it's all for the purpose of gathering, and the Torah says silver. That's one pshat. V'ibay saying another pshat to explain why we use dafka gold for the shayfer. HaTorah chasa al memayne shel Yisrael. Sorry, again, this explains benegay to the silver. Why dafka silver and not the gold? Because the Torah has mercy on the money of Yidden. The silver is not as expensive, and therefore we use dafka the silver. But if that's the reason, if so, say the same thing regarding the shayfer and Rosh Hashanah. It should also be made from silver, not to overspend money over here. And for the Gemara, filachi kavod Yom Tif adif. When it comes to Rosh Hashanah, for the kavod of the Yom Tif, that's something that's more important to show the kavod of the Yom Tif. And the mitzvah, it's not stam blowing to gather people, but it's a mitzvah and it's the Yom Tif. For this, we make a dafka with gold. Now the Gemara comes to this point of here, that in the Beis Hamikdash they had the shayfris and they had the chatzaitzeris. Why don't we do this today? So the Gemara Rav Papa Bar Shmuel Savar Lamavad of the Kemas Nisan. So he wanted to do, like it said in the Mishnah, that you should blow chatzaitzeris and also the shayfris together. Amalei Rav, so Rav said to him, Lo Yomru Ela b'Mikdash. This that they blow with shayfer and the chatzaitzeris, that's only in the Beis Hamikdash. Tanya Nami Hachi, we learned this in Abraisa B'Med, Varam Amurim b'Mikdash. This is only in the Beis Hamikdash, Avul b'Gvulin, but in the borders, in other words, in the other places in Eretz Yisrael. So over there, Mokim Sheyesh Chatzaitzeris Ein Shayfer. If it's a time that you blow with Chatzaitzeris, which is and a fast, so there's no Shayfer. And Mokim Sheyesh Shayfer Ein Chatzaitzeris, a time where there is a Shayfer, which is Rosh Hashanah, there's no Chatzaitzeris. You don't mix the two. Gemara brings now a similar story. V'chein hinig Rab Chalafte Gvulim, because that's the lashon that's always used regarding Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael, within the borders of Eretz Yisrael. But over here, it doesn't mean only Eretz Yisrael. It means anywhere in the world. V'chein hinig Rab Chalafte b'Tzipairi. Rab Chalafte also in Tzipairi. V'Rab Chanina ben Teradim b'Sichni. They actually made the custom that on Rosh Hashanah they should blow shayfer together with chatzaitzeris, like what Rav, who was it before? Rav Papa Bar Shmuel wanted to do. So they made this minig this way. One second. They made this minig in their place. And when this thing, what the minig that they made came to the Chachamim, Amru loy, so they said, they said, loy oyu noigen kain, ela b'sharei mizrach b'har habayis, that this minig to have the shayfret and the chatzaitzeris is only in the mizrach entrance to the Azara and by the har habayis b'lvad, only there. Not anywhere else. And the Gemara now brings the source. What's the source for this? That this is only in the Beis Hamikdash and not anywhere else. So therefore, what do we see in this pasuk? Lifnei Melech Hashem. When you're blowing in front of the Eibishter, that's in the Beis Hamikdash. Who the bin chatzaitzeris the kol shayfer. There you blow with both together chatzaitzeris and the shayfer. Avol ba'alma, anywhere else, like. You don't blow with both together. On a fast, you blow with chatzaitzeris, and in Rosh Hashanah, you blow only with shayfer. So that's the conclusion of the Gemara, and of course, this is our minig today.
Doesn't it say not to copy this, make a copy from chatzaitzeris after the Hamikdash?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Sagt the Gemara, Shava hayovel Rosh Hashanah l'tkiye u'lebrachas chulu. So the Mishnah said, just like in Rosh Hashanah, you blow with shayfer, and you say the brachas of Malchi, Zachraynis, and shayfris. So too, we do the same on Yovel when it comes to Yom Kippur. Amar Rab Shmuel bar Yitzchak, Keman Matzlina na Idne, according to whose opinion do we daven today on Rosh Hashanah when we say, Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha? This is the day, the beginning of creation. Zikaron L'Yom Rishon. A remembrance or commemoration for the first day of creation. According to is it the first day of creation. Commands like the Gemara, according to who? Rabbi Eliezer. This is Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. We had before in the Gemara the Machlekes about this. The Amar Rabbi Eliezer said, B'tishrei Nivra Ilam. Right? Rabbi Yeshua said the world is created in Nisan, and Rabbi Eliezer says the world is created in Tishrei. So therefore, according to Rabbi Eliezer, we say, Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha. Right? So I mentioned already then, the Ran explains, the Marsha explains, that really the Medrash says that the first day of creation was Chafei Elul. Rosh Hashanah is the first day that is the sixth day of creation, really, which is the day that Adam Rishon was created. But because Adam Rishon is the purpose of creation, so therefore we refer to Rosh Hashanah as Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha. Masav Ravina, so Ravina asked on this. It said in the Mishnah, Shava Yovel Rosh Hashanah. Yovel is compared to Rosh Hashanah, L'tkiyah, L'brachis, that you blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah, on Yovel, that is as well, on Yom Kippur, and also you say these brachis of Malchis, Zechrenis, and Shofris, including this statement of Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha. Ubi Yovel, fragt the Gemara, that is, V'ha'ikir Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha Zekaron L'Yom Rishon, but in the brachis we also say Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha Zekaron L'Yom Rishon. The Rosh Hashanah Isa, on Rosh Hashanah this is true, it's the first day of creation. Ubi Yovel Lesa, but on Yovel it's not true. So how could you say that you say the same brachis of Rosh Hashanah, including this Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha on Yovel as well? And for the Gemara, you're right, Kikatani Ashara. When it says in the Mishnah that you say the brachas of Rosh Hashanah on Yovel, it refers to all the other parts of the brachas, but not this statement. This part of Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha, you can't say in Yovel. He learned this conversation here as follows. When it says in the Mishnah that Yovel is compared to Rosh Hashanah, l'tkiyah or l'brachas, it's for the tkiyas and for the brachas that it's the same thing. Come on, according to whose opinion is this? The Loik Rabbi Eliezer. It doesn't seem that this could go even according to Rabbi Eliezer. Needless to say, it can't go according to Rabbi Yeshua. He says that the world is created on Nisan, but it can't go even according to Rabbi Eliezer either. Why not? The Rabbi Eliezer, if it would go according to Rabbi Eliezer, Kivin Dama B'Tishrei Nivra Ilam. Rabbi Eliezer says the world is created in Tishrei, and that is on Rosh Hashanah. So ha'ikah Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha Zekaron L'Yom Rishon de Rosh Hashanah Isa or b'Yovel Lesa. And it's only on Rosh Hashanah we can say this is the first day of creation, and we can't say that about Yovel. So how could the Mishnah say that you say these brachas even on Yovel? Ki katani ashara. So the answer is, like we said, that the Taka don't say that part on Yovel. You say everything else, but not this part of here. So here is the famous Tosfos. Here, if you look at the Tosfos Kaman, towards the end of that Tosfos is the famous Tosfos that's always quoted in Chassidus, where Rabbeinu Tam says, "Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim," that you have the two opinions, whether the world is created in Tishrei or it's created in Nisan. And Tosfos says, "Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim," and the difference is whether the world is created b'machshave or the world is created b'maiseh. So if you look inside our Tosfos here, the Tosfos says that in Tishrei the world is created b'machshave. In Nisan, the world is created b'maisa. But in Chassidus, it's always quoted in the reverse, that in Tishrei, the world is created b'maisa, and in Nisan, the world is created b'machshava. So the Rebbe explains that even though in Tosfos it says it in this way, but according to the Tosfos earlier in the Masechta, where it speaks about the Tkufis, over there, it's clear from Tosfos that it's the other way around, that the world is created b'machshava in Nisan, and b'maisa, the world is created in Tishrei. So that's where Chassidus is always quoting this from. And this concept, what does this mean? That the Eibusha creates the world of Machshava in Nisan time, and then he creates the world of Maisa in Tishrei time. It's not that it takes the Eibusha time to plan 6 months what he wants to do, and then in actuality he only implements it 6 months later. The Eibusha doesn't need that time. Elamai, Chassidus explains, there's 2 layers to creation. There's the Pnimius of the Bria. There's the Bria which is bottled to the Eibusha, that the whole world is just a place for fulfilling Torah mitzvahs. There's no independence that the world could sense, mitzat the machshava of the Eibusher. And then there's the mitzias of the world b'chatzonius that exists with a tzimtzum, and the world is here and it exists as a mitzias for itself. That's the chatzonius b'maisa, which is created in the month of Tishrei. Those are the 2 inyanim of the Bria.
That takes 6 months?
No, it doesn't take. It's just 2 different aspects. It's 2 different layers. It's not this concept of Nisan. When it says Machshave, this was what this is called in the time of Toyu, before there was an actual creation. From Nisan to Tishrei, there was no Zman yet. Zman was only created in Tishrei, so it was all at the same moment. But it's 2 levels. It's a level of Machshave and a level of Maisa. If you have a shofar that was cracked, so what does this crack over here mean? So there's two pshatim in this. Taisuf says that according to Rashi, we're talking about a shofar that was cracked into two. And he goes and he glues the shofar together. That's Rashi's pshat. According to Taisuf, we're talking about a shofar that has a crack that runs through the whole shofar and the length of the shofar from the beginning to the end. And Vedavka, and he glued it, puzzle. It's going to be puzzle. So Rashi says the reason why it's possible because it's like two shofars. If it cracked and you totally cracked and you put it together, it's like two different shofars. That's what Rashi says. Taisva says the reason is not because it's two different shofars. Taisva says that this is not called a shofar. A shofar that's cracked, so therefore a shofar means a whole shofar. If it has a crack from the beginning till the end, that's not a shofar. Dibek shivrei shofris, if a person attaches the broken pieces of a shofar, puzzle. So it's also going to be puzzle. So here, over here again, there's two pshat in what this means. According to Rashi, the Mefarshim say the pshat is he took broken pieces not from the same shofar. He took broken pieces from different shofars and put it together. It's going to be puzzle. If it was talking about from the same shofar, then it's the same thing as the first case in the Mishnah. It's talking about that he took different pieces from different shofars, and this is also going to be puzzle. And the emes is what?
So it's surely two shofars.
And a chanami, exactly. So according to the way the Mefarshim say, this is what's called zu ve'ein sarich loimezu. The Mishnah starts saying one halacha, and then it says, needless to say, that this case will also be puzzle. But according to Taisas, dibek shivrei shofris is speaking about the pieces, the broken pieces of the same shofar. So the Mishnah weiter, Nikke v'sasmai, if there was a hole in the shofar and he clogged up the hole. Imake v'satkiye pasol. So if this hole, this is the way Taisus explains the Mishnah, if the hole was large enough that when there's the hole there, it holds back the sound of the shofar of coming back because of this hole. And now you clog it up, so then it's going to be pasol. Because what that means is when you clogged it up, it's not really the sound of the shofar. Without clogging it up, it didn't have the sound of the shofar. So it's now this clogging that you put there that changes the sound of the shofar. Vim lav kosher, but if it's such a small hole that it doesn't affect the sound of the shofar, so then even if you clog it up, it's still going to be kosher. A person blows shofar into a pit, into a dus, which is like a pit, but it's above ground. Into a large barrel. If you hear the sound of the shofar, yotza. But if you hear the sound, which is an echo, lo yotze, you're not yotze. A similar loch, a person that's walking behind the shul, or you have a house that's right near the shul, and you hear the sound of the shofar, or you hear them reading the Megillah in shul. So either here, so im kiven liboy, if you have kavanah to be yaitze, so then yatsa, you'll be yaitze the mitzvah. Vim lav, if you do not have kavanah, lo yatsa, you're not going to be yaitze. Afal pisha zeh shama, v'zeh shama, even though both of them heard the same Megillah, the same shofar, two people could be standing near each other, and they both heard the same thing. But zeh kiven liboy, v'zeh lo kiven liboy. One of them had kavanah, and one of them did not have kavanah. So if you did not have kavanah, you will not be yaitze. It seems to be that the Mishnah is saying that mitzvah srichas kavana, but the Gemara will discuss it. We'll see in the Gemara. Lav dafka. It's based on that. Could be the Gemara will explain, as we'll see. So the Gemara here, we're going to have different braises that are going to discuss the halachas of the Mishnah, and a lot of the different things in the Gemara here is going to be repetitive. So different braises that are overlapping. So the Gemara Tanir Rabbanan, we learned in the braise oroch v'kotzrei. If you have a shofar that was long and he shortened the shofar, kosher, right? So you have a shofar that's a longer shofar. So at the end of the shofar, you can cut off a part, and it could still be the shiur of a shofar, as we'll see soon what the shiur of a shofar is. So it's still kosher. Gardai, if a person scrapes the surface of the shofar, and v'amidai al gildai, he scraped it, that now the shofar just has it's like a thin, very thin layer of a shofar. It's not the regular thick shofar. Kosher, it's still kosher. In other words, there is no shiur to the thickness of a shofar. It doesn't matter how thin the layer of the shofar is. Tzipos of, if you plate it with gold, if you put the gold where the mouth of the person goes and he blows, then possible. Not in the place where the mouth of the person is, kosher. Then it'll be kosher. Suppose of, if you plate it with gold on the inside of the shofar, so mibifnim, if that's from the inside of the shofar, possible. Then it'll be possible because the gold affects the sound of the shofar. Mibachutz, if you place it on the outside of the shofar, so then in the shtana kaila mikamayis shahaya, if because of the gold that you're plating it does affect the sound of the shofar, even if it's from the outside, so then possible. But vim lav, if it doesn't affect the sound of the shofar, kosher, and then it's going to be kosher. Nikiv, if there's a hole in the shofar v'sasmai and he clogged up the hole, imakiv v'satkiya, if that hole was large enough that it affected the sound of the shofar, puzzle. But vim lav, if it didn't affect the sound, then it's kosher. Nasan shofar b'toich shofar, you place one shofar into another shofar. Im koil pnimi shama, if you're only hearing the sound of the inside shofar, and the sound is coming out of the inside shofar, and it does not go through the walls of the outside shofar as well. So then yotza, it's coming out of one shofar. In other words, if the inside shofar sticks out from the end further than the outside shofar, that is, so you're not getting at all the sound of the outside shofar. It's just one shofar, so you yotza. But if the sound comes from the inside shofar, but then it also goes through the outside shofar, so then you're not going to be yotza because that's two shofars. Tana Rabbanan, we learned another brayse. Gardai, if you scrape the surface of the shofar, maybe bafnim, maybe bachotz, whether you did this from the inside of the shofar or the outside of the shofar, kosher, doesn't matter. It's still going to be kosher. Gardai v'midei al gilda, even if you scrape it and all you have is this thin plate, this thin layer of a shofar, still kosher. Hiniach shofar b'toich shofar, if you place a shofar into another shofar. Im kol pnimi shama yatza, if you hear the sound of one shofar, of the inside shofar, and the outside is not affecting it at all, so then you yotze. But v'im kol chitzen shama la yatza. But if you blow and you hear the sound is coming from the inside and from the outside shofar, then you're not going to be yotze. Havchay v'takabai, if a person turns over the shofar and he blows with it, la yatza, you're not going to be yotze. Now, what exactly does this mean that you turn over the shofar? So the Gemara explains. Amar Rav Papa says, we're not talking about a person that turns over a shofar like a person that takes a shirt and wears his shirt upside down. So the same thing over here, that a person took the shofar and he reversed it inside out. I guess with hot water you can totally reverse the whole entire shofar. That's not what we mean. If a person went and took the broader side of the shofar and made it narrow, and he took the narrow side and he widened it, so then you're not going to be yotze. My time, Kid Rav Masna. So like Rav Masna said, Amar Rav Masna v'havarto. When the Torah says the mitzvah of shofar, it says v'havarto shofar through. What does this mean? Derech havarase b'inan. You blow the shofar, it has to go in the right direction of the way it's blown naturally from the narrow side to the wider side. It said in the Mishnah, dibek shivrei shofar is puzzle. If you connect broken pieces of a shofar, it's going to be puzzle. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in the brayse, hoysef olav kol shehu, if you add anything to the shofar. At the end of the shofar, you add another piece to it. Bein b'minay, bein shaloi b'minay, whether you add something which is the min of the shofar, or you add something which is not the min of the shofar, puzzle. It's going to be puzzle. It's like the sound is using another thing that's adding to the sound of the shofar. It's going to be puzzle. What we said before, and here the Gemara is going to discuss more details about this, the hole of the shofar. Nikev v'sasmai, if you have a hole in the shofar and you clog the hole. So here it adds, bein b'minai. Tanakama says whether you clogged it with the min of the shofar, bein shaloi b'minai, whether you clogged it not with the min of the shofar, puzzle. Either way, the Tanakama says it's going to be puzzle. Rab Nassan says, b'minai kosher. If you clogged it with the min of the shofar itself, then it's going to be kosher. Shaloi b'minai puzzle. If you clogged it not with the min of the shofar, then it's going to be puzzle. So the Gemara now explains, b'minai kosher. This that it said that if you clog the shofar with the min of the shofar, it's going to be kosher. Rabbi Yechanan says, but that's only if you have the majority of the shofar that's still intact. Miklal, so from this I understand, the shaloi b'minai, that if you clog the shofar with something that's not the min of the shofar, so then aval b'shen nishtaya rubai, even if most of the shofar is intact, puzzle, it's still going to be puzzle. That's one version of what Rabbi Yechanan said. Others said that it goes on the seifa of this statement here. Shaloi b'minai puzzle, that if you clog the shofar not with the min, so then it's going to be puzzle. On this, Rabbi Yechanan v'husha nifchas rubai. When is it going to be puzzle? If you clog the shofar not with its min, only if most of the shofar is a hole is so large that most of the shofar is gone. So Meklal, from this I understand, if you clog the shofar with its min, afal pi shenifchas rubai, even if most of the shofar has a hole in it, kosher, it's still going to be kosher. So what's not discussed, so here we see that this concept is a machlekes, right? We had this in the Mishnah, but over there in the Mishnah it did not discuss what material you're clogging the shofar with. Are you clogging it with its min or not with its min? Over here we see there's a machlekes here between the Tanakama and Rab Nassan. But there's another detail that was mentioned in the Mishnah that the Brayse doesn't bring up. Did the sound of the shofar get affected by this hole or not? So Rashi here says that we're talking about a case that the sound of the shofar did not get affected. I think that's what Rashi says over here. Let's see, that I believe that's what Rashi says, that it did not get affected. Yeah, Rashi says that we're talking in this brayso that it did not affect the sound. But Taisus over here says it's hard to believe that because we're talking about a shofar that has such a large hole. Even if Roiv, the brayso says, Roiv of the shofar, the Gemara says, Roiv of the shofar is here, not Roiv of the shofar. If you have such a large hole, even if Roiv of the shofar is still there, for sure the sound got affected. So Taisus learns that this whole brayso is talking about that the sound did get affected. Okay, Zok the Gemara weiter. Where we're holding over here. Tzipahu zahav. If he plated it with gold, mi bafnim, if it's on the inside of the shofar, pasul. Mi bachutz, if you plated it on the outside of the shofar. So then, as we said before, if it affected the sound from the way it was, then pasul. Vim lav kosher. If it not affected, then it's going to be kosher. Nisdak, if the shofar has a crack in it. La'arkai, if the crack is on the length of the shofar, pasul. It's because it goes in the length where you're blowing the shofar, so it's going to be pasul. L'rachbai, if the crack is in the width of the shofar, so there I say, im nishtaya by shiur tkiya, if before the crack you still have a shiur of a shofar that's large enough to be able to blow with it, so then kosher. So the crack that's further down in the shofar, it doesn't matter. It's going to be kosher. But vim lav, if the crack is so further inside the shofar, so much inside the shofar to the extent that you don't even have enough of the shiur of the shofar, then pasul. Then it's going to be pasul.
Then it's changing the code?
No, we're talking over here about the shiur of the shofar.
Yeah,
It's not. No, it doesn't change the coil. If it changes the coil, then it's not going to be good. Even if it does not change the sound of the shofar, the issue over here is the shiur of the shofar right now. Now, v'kam shiur tkiya. What is the shiur for a shofar to be able to blow from it? Perish Rabshim v'gamliel kadesh yechzena biyadeh v'yireh lekan lekan. That a person can hold a shofar and you can still see the shofar in his hands from both sides. In other words, a little bit more than a tefach, that you can see the shofar from both sides in his hands. If you have the sound of the shofar that's very thin, or very thick sound of the shofar, like very, very dry sound of the shofar. Kosher, either way it's kosher. Any sound is kosher with the shofar. This is always brought in the Maimonim of Chassidus, that the sound of the shofar is the simple sound of the cry of a yid, so it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to have some musical sound or anything specific. It was sent to the father of Shmuel. If you drill a hole inside the shofar, and that's how you blew with the shofar, yotza, you're going to be yaitza. Fragt the Gemara Pshita, obviously. Kulu nami miktach katchulo. That's how every shofar works. No, you drill a hole in the sound of a hole in the shofar, and then that's how you blow with it. Amar Ravashi, so Ravashi says shakotchay bizachrusay. He didn't fully empty the filling inside the shofar. He left that filling inside. He just made a hole through it. Somehow the taima, I would think, min b'minoi chaitzitz. The min of the filling that's inside the shofar, naturally, you left it inside and therefore it's a chatzitze. You can't blow with it. Even though you made a hole and you could make a sound, but it's still chaitzitz. Kamash malan, that's the chiddush, that as long as you drilled a hole through it, even if you didn't empty it of the whole filling, it's still going to be kosher. You could be yaitze the mitzvah.